Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Anita Bhatia, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Let's Talk Policy. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Carlos Montes, who's joining us from the Judge Business School at Cambridge University, where Carlos is the lead of the Innovation Hub. This hub is driving innovations that scale through markets and benefit all citizens, especially through open e-commerce networks and digital infrastructure. And Carlos, in his role as the lead of the Innovation for Prosperity Hub, is somebody who is at the forefront of thinking about how to bring best practice from one context in development from one country to another. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Carlos before we jump into questions. Carlos and I actually go back a long way. We were graduate students together at Yale, but since then he's had an illustrious career spanning international institutions, governments, large corporations, including the World Bank, the European Commission, Cisco, and Accenture. He has spent 8 years also in leading social innovation, very much at the front lines for delivery of health-related behavioral changes in a program initially branded and led by Jamie Oliver. Carlos was associate of the UK Prime Minister's Delivery Unit under Michael Barber and Director of Evaluations of EU programs worldwide. He's also led an evaluation for the European Council of Ministers, covering almost 10 billion euros in programming. He has served as an economist at the World Bank and the Central Bank of Peru, and as I previously mentioned, holds a postgraduate degree in economics from Yale, but also from Columbia. He was also recently an advisor to the Pathways to Prosperity program, which focused on identifying global best practices for successful democratic transitions, decentralized governance, and the building of state capability and accountability. Wow. With that impressive background, can I just say, Carlos, it's a great pleasure to have you on this series with us. And I know that the students of the Kautilya School and others who will be watching this webinar after it's recorded will really benefit from listening to you. So let's jump right into it. And I'm going to start by asking you a question which is really fundamental to educate our audience. What is an open commerce network? So please, the grandmother version. What is an open e-commerce network? For those of us who don't know exactly what it is, have some idea of what we think it is, educate us, please.
Thank you, Anita. That's very kind. And after that introduction, I think I can only disappoint. But, you know, let it be as it be. And that question of open networks is something that actually I have been working for the last 4 months. And I am not sure if I can answer your question properly. But a way to think about it is, you know, if we think about, you know, the way we send messages in the internet, okay, so you know, we all have different email programs, Gmail, Microsoft, you know, and still we're all able to read, you know, what we are sending in these emails. And that's because there is a standardized language, you know, a set of rules, which is a protocol. And that protocol is called SMTP. So, you know, if we take that, you know, and we consider that an open network because that's an open network of one type, in the same way that the internet itself is an open network that allows computers to send communication or data between each other using, you know, different things, TCP, IP, again, and other protocols. The open network that we're talking about, and it's an open network not just about commerce, but transactions as well. You know, and a colleague just asked for, you know, last week for a one-liner on this, and so we have been trying this, and we're saying that it's a standardized way to discover all individuals and organizations, and they can discover each other for accessing products and services. They can also exchange information and complete end-to-end transactions. So, the idea is that it becomes a sort of internet, to moving the internet from just being data to be an internet of transactions. So every network can communicate with each other. So the key there is the interoperability that there is. And this applies to different sectors. It can be open banking is a kind of UPI, or Pix in Brazil. And of course, in India, it's much easier to understand this because, you have ONDC, which is an open commerce sort of network. And then that's applied also to education, to energy, to different sectors that we can talk about. But I think that as an introduction will be my answer.
Thank you, Carlos. Of course, the thing that's going through my mind is privacy concerns and how much information about an individual the world gets to have through this, but we'll come to that. What I want to start digging a little more deeply into is the current work you're doing. And you're at the Judge Business School, one of the finest institutions of higher learning in the world. So truly the world is your oyster and you could go anywhere to pick a program, a project, an initiative that you want to dig deeper into or learn from or replicate. Why did you come to India?
Well, it's not that I wanted to come to India, really, but
not? Okay.
But I'm Peruvian, so India is a bit far away. So it was just it just happened to be that way. I think Brazil would have been my first choice of if I was going to go somewhere. But I think I was doing this work actually for a previous institute, and the idea was to get what are fundamental key ideas that progressive political leaders or reformist political leaders could take to use, around the world. And so we work on decentralization, we work on the concept of democratic governance, and then in the business school, with my colleague, Professor Jaideep Prabhu, who has written a book on frugal innovation and all that, and who's a very, someone that has worked, in many areas and has books on how to govern and all that. He said, you must do the India stack. And of course, stack is not a name that, is intrinsically appealing. So, I had a little reticent to get into that area. But, Jaideep is persuasive and he's a smart guy. So I follow, that through. And so I began to work a little bit on the digital infrastructure and all that. And, we were coming with a paper. That was nice. And, I was discovering that it was, amazing things, with all these universal IDs, the system of payments. And then we had the luck of coming across with Nandan Nilekani, who had been the architect of all this in the British High Commission in London. And which I shared a draft with him or his wife actually at that time. And we were really lucky because, I don't think many papers I have written had, much impact, evaluations. People always say, yes, we're doing what you're saying, but the reality, is often different. But in this case, Nandan somehow really read the paper. And not only that, but, he provided really detailed feedback, helping us understand what it was really about. And, so we gratefully accepted that. But also, he kindly invited me to visit Bangalore. And so that happened last September. And through that, I could actually discover, what to me was a kind of miracle, because India is still a low income country, and so, it's difficult to imagine that, really transformative digital changes can come from India. But the reality is that, when I was there, I not only saw the impressive changes in all areas, but the fact that, it is a relatively small team of very, very dedicated people that have made this possible. And so, so I think from there, I thought, look, it seems to me that, a lot of the issues on how to govern a country and beyond have been addressed in India, because, you know, obviously you have also a 1.4 billion population. So, you know, you have done things at massive scale, you know, and so you know, in the Innovation Hub, we were thinking, which I did, that we wanted to, you know, to showcase in the world, you know, the best technologies. But, you know, we thought, there is maybe not much, you know, much need to look for technologies beyond what we are already found here in India in education. For example, EXTEP, you know, it's an institution that, you know, has addressed issues, you know, at all scale with living books, and then the same with e-government foundation that has, I think, 25 years doing work administratively and has systems that, again, scale up, you know, and I think the trick of all these, you know, technologies is that they are very citizen-centered. They are very inclusive. And they are also, they build like Lego-like. So they, you know, they are step-by-step, you know, solutions. So, you know, they had, you know, incredible appeal, and meeting the team, we discovered that obviously this is done because of the dedication to public service that, you know, the teams have in India. So that's how, you know, although we want to, you know, to say that these open networks and these ideas are, you know, also, you know, there in Estonia and Brazil, but, you know, India is close because, you know, we have had the lack of experience this firsthand.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. No, a really nice story. And if your paper is available for wider sharing, please do
Yes.
share it with us, because I know
Yes.
many students
Yes.
at the Kautilya School of Public Policy would be interested in reading what was this paper that captured Nandan Nilekani's interest, and which really was the genesis of this initiative. So going back to your visit to Bangalore, so you investigated this, you discovered some very key elements, the fact that the team was small, this dedication to public service, the fact that there actually had been proof of concept already in different sectors, some for many years, some for 2 decades. So what exactly is Cambridge University now doing with this information that you gathered in Bangalore? What is your initiative? What does it purport to do? What is its ultimate objective?
Right. So yes, we have a website, and all the papers are available in that website, and we'll leave the details, but it's basically innovation-prosperity.org. And there, you know, we have that playbook that we wrote initially. But the website itself, when you ask what open networks are, you know, pretty much the whole website is dedicated just to explain that, you know, to make it accessible, right? Yeah, accessible, because it's not an easy concept. But, you know, we say that, you know, Nandan himself has said, and we have that quote in the website, that of all the ideas that he has had, this is the one that has most transformational potential for businesses.
Yes,
okay? So
yes, I did see that.
That's
yes.
You know, just to give you the you know, you know, on how these big ideas are. But the concept of the Innovation Hub for Prosperity is to, you know, have something in Cambridge which helps to disseminate those ideas, because those ideas apply, you know, to India, you know, to Brazil, which is a country that we are starting to sort of to do work with, but also to countries like the UK. So, for example, now we're having a little workshop at the beginning of June, where we have managed to, you know, work collaboratively with Amazon Web Services. And we have as panelists, you know, the UK Chief Technological Officer, the Permanent Secretary for Business and Trade. We have Jeff Melgan, who had been the, you know, top technologies in the UK and former director of Nesta. And the aim of this is, again, to answer your initial question: what are open networks and what's the potential that they offer? Because, you know, in our view, and, you know, I might be totally wrong, but, you know, I mean, you know, I'm trusting there Nandan and the technical teams, you know, this is transformational for, you know, for the economy. And it can be the economy of the UK as well, because, for example, there is an initiative in transport in the Netherlands, where, they're using open networks in transport to link, trains, taxis, bicycles, all modes of transportations with similar pavements, and so, this, and particularly for the sustainable economy, for the green economy, for circularity, what this technology does, and that's the idea of networks, is you have networks that don't have a centralized platform that is controlled by big companies, but it's, and the idea is that the governance of this centralized platform is decentralized. But what it allows you is to reduce the friction in creating markets, which means that if you have a little surplus of solar energy, you can trade that very easily. And so, in India already, there is also this open energy sort of concept through, UHI or UAI. And so our aim are, we can think it in two folds. One is to, to contribute to the discussion and try to bring these ideas, because, you can have a great technology and great idea, but, people might not use it, and that's very common. And so it is good. This can happen with this technology as well. So we are trying to, to support the dissemination of these ideas. And then in practical terms as well, we have initiatives, as I mentioned, there is something that has started with Belém Aberta in Brazil, which is to create, again, this open network system in the city of Belém in order to encourage it to become a smart city. We are also working with the city of Chiclayo in Peru, trying to bring that idea, linking the two cities. And of course, once the two are linked, they are also linked with India. So it just changes the entire pattern of trade. We have no funding yet for any of these initiatives. So, this is part of the work that we want to do. But I think we're trying to do that in the context of G20, because India was holder of the G20, and there was a strong emphasis on digital infrastructure. And so we want to sort of like support Brazil continuing with that in two ways. One, through what I mentioned of doing the link within Belém and Chiclayo, using the Belém entrepreneurs actually in Chiclayo. And we had talked to the mayor and all that. So it's just the funding that we need at this point. But similarly, we had discussions with the Central Bank of Brazil, and they are very interested in how the fintech system, the Indian fintech system, works in the context of UPI, because that is kind of the next step for them as well in the context of their own financial system, and PIX, which is also very successful, and is also open network based. So, we are trying to, to do very specific things, but, it's obviously ambitious because we are a small team, but we are working really as partnerships. So we have this partnership now with FIDE. This website is a partnership of the Cambridge Dutch Business School, the Center for India and Global Business, with the Foundation for Interoperability of the Digital Economy, which is co-founded by Nandan Nilekani, Pramod Varma, and Sujit Nair, names that are very familiar to the people in India. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, no, this is truly fantastic, Carlos, and I can see the implications and the potential for smoothing out inefficiencies in markets and for creating new markets, actually, where they don't exist. So clearly transformational for different sectors of the economy, and for breaking silos between different sectors of the economy as well. So clearly huge potential. Do you see any risks as you're going forward? And of course, I can think of a number of them, including political risks, but what do you see as the big risks, and what are you doing to mitigate these risks?
I think, I prefer that you go for the risks and I reply, because, I am busy enough, trying to make this work. So I'm happy that you give it the thinking. But I think, unlike other parts of digital infrastructure, where, there is a concentration of even with the ID, having a national ID, to have this in the hands of, governments that may not be too democratic, offers, substantial risks. I think, with the concept of open networks, the concept is that the platforms are decentralized, and therefore, while for example, the owner of the platform, being Facebook, being Amazon, has control on your data and your, in these systems, actually the information is with the consumer, so that the customer, the buyer, you have some control, and the data is dispersed. And so the rules, the governance of the platform determine, how this is done by, while currently you have only one organization, one corporation that sets the rules, in this system, it's decentralized. So it also, from the point of view of the government, it introduces competition by design, right? So instead of thinking, oh, this company is getting too large, how, what can I do? And you're always playing catch up because the other sector has more resources than you. In this case, you're just saying, look, it needs to be interoperable. So that means that market can always be accessible. There is always going to be a competitor. You are unable, because with technology, as this economist, as Emoglu, sort of says, technology, yes, delivers, but, it depends also on power, on who is in control of this technology. So the fundamental, I think, insight of this work is that, we're trying to make sure that the technology, is done in a way that benefits citizens, and not just corporations. And so, I think at least I see it as, as the risks relatively, small.
Yeah. No, I do really appreciate, Carlos, this idea that decentralization creates more democracy and more accountability through competition, because we are living in a world where the large technology companies are basically unregulated in some way or the other, and are able to escape paying their fair share of taxes, are able to collect huge amounts of data, and antitrust and anti-monopoly laws don't apply because there were no regulatory frameworks for dealing with the size of technology companies as they are today. So do you believe that this decentralized democratic approach will also address some of the concerns about privacy, because it is citizen-centered, and B, misinformation that is become a hallmark of certain kinds of technology companies?
Yeah, I mean, without going to sort of big statements, I think, the point is that, what open networks allows is that even small players have access to markets. So it becomes much easier, for companies to be part of the network than not. And therefore, also in terms of competition, as you said, the idea that you have a technology that allows you to develop a monopoly, initially at least, becomes more difficult because, you don't have this kind of network effect, because the network effect, requires you to exclude, say this is the people inside my network or not. But here is an open network, so it allows you to, to get, that sort of competition all the time, while at the same time, because if you see, for example, UPI in India, the government sets a level, but then there is space for a lot of innovation that comes from the private sector. So in fact, I think in the website we mentioned the amount of digital economy that has been generated through the through UPI. So it's the number of new players that come along. But I think even incumbents, so companies that, for example, Amazon, as part of ONDC, I understand is going to still be working on the logistics of the entire operation. So, it allows, just generally more competition. And, as economists, in theory, at least, we always like competition. So this is, generally, a good thing. But also, it brings the element of inclusiveness. So and even at a more, we want to, given the fact that you started as a political scientist, if I remember correctly, after this so many years, it allows, even small political units to be part of, getting federations, or, because it is bringing, it's bringing together and facilitating collaboration. So, it has many, it has a lot of potential, but it requires a lot of work, because, of course, this is not something that large companies are going to immediately jump into, so probably startups, they are the ones that are going to, to start with this technology, as is in the case in the Netherlands, for example, but also in Brazil.
Yeah, I love the idea of the inclusivity. So walking through a real transaction, if I'm a small woman-owned business at home making artisanal products, I'm losing a lot of money, because if I'm trying to sell my products through Amazon, they're taking a huge cut. And what I'm getting at the end of this transaction, because I have to intermediate through that platform, is very small. So if I understand you correctly, in this brave new world, I, as a small woman-owned business, can go directly and transact directly with potential customers who are interested in my products, but I don't have to necessarily go through a big platform like Amazon to make this known to the world, correct?
That's right. So the context is, you have your business, you will use a platform normally, but could be any platform, but any platform that you use will be hooked to all the other platforms. So you will be discovered in any of the platforms that are hooked to the network. And therefore, the governance, and this applies also already in India to taxi drivers, for example. So in the city of Bengaluru, you have Namajatri, and that was created a little bit because, I think some people were a bit, unhappy with Uber and the margins, etc. And so the unions created, this system, and so they themselves, I think it's the actually IT company that runs the platform, but they kind of like co-share it, and obviously that platform has also competition from other networks. So yes, you gain much more control of that, but also you may gain control of your own data, and so it empowers the small businesses, and so I think the political economy of India, I think, has allowed to create a space for ideas like this, which is empowering citizens. Like UPI allows to have a system where instead of having a charge of 1-2% for transactions, it has basically no cost. And so that creates an incredible dynamism. And so I think this is if anything, is going back to the concept of the internet, initially, where, the idea was that it was going to be an open sort of internet. So, the idea is perhaps to move from what it was the platform economy to a more network economy. And so, that's the idea. But the idea is that it brings, along, it creates good business for everyone. So for incumbents and all the people, new people.
And in terms of barriers to entry, Carlos, what do you see as barriers to entry, if any, for me, back to me as the woman-owned business?
Yeah,
what barriers to entry would I face?
Yeah, of course, it depends where and when, etc. But of course, first you need to know about it. Then you need to sort of like understand how it works. Then someone needs to help you to onboard you into that platform. And so, I think, then you need to create systems that are also as good as, let's say, the existing platforms, because you don't, you're not going to just say, oh, I'm going to use that platform, but I don't know exactly what's the appeal process, what's the and so there is a lot of things to iron. So I don't want to sort of like present the scenario where the future has already come, but I think there is a viable way to to make all that work. And and I think as the example I mentioned in the Netherlands is an example where, hopefully, things will move sailing. But, the hope when we have this workshop in Cambridge is, we invite people from the Cambridge Council, etc. So in different areas, because in education, one thing is to have access to all the offer of courses and etc., scholarships, in one place rather than the silo fragmented way that you need to access it, and so it's much more user-friendly. And so, that applies to education, it applies to energy, and so yes, I think, it requires a lot of work, but, it is possible to, to do it.
And I can see how this could have, Carlos, also huge impacts, for example, in the health sector, where the siloing of information, whether it is information about what works, about patient outcomes, at least reflecting on experience in the US, it is absolutely impossible to get good data on patient outcomes that may be useful for individuals to take into account in decision making. So this could have tremendous potential in reducing those kinds of information asymmetries as well, correct?
So yeah, so I think and this I think we have there hasn't been too much thinking yet in all the potential, but I think what you're mentioning, and particularly so the idea that in organizations, applying, I guess both to the UK and the US, all the systems are very fragmented. So in the in the UK you have the NHS, where you have the GP surgery, so a local level, and then you have the hospitals, and then the trust, all the, and they all have their different IT systems. They have their different way of, creating, reserving places for, and in the in the US, you have a health system as well that is insurance-based, but again, with many actors and all of them with their systems. And it is a fact that the people in the US have been exploring, how to use Beacon, the protocol that, moves all these open networks, to see what's the potential of that technology to help to integrate or improve the communication with between the different parts of the system. Similarly, in the UK, there is a awareness that that the NHS needs to digitalize, but the digitalization of something so huge looks impossible. So this decentralized approach of doing the digitalization seems much more feasible, and I think this, so that's one of the primary uses. But of course, for that, there needs to be awareness of how it works. And obviously, also, and this applies to Latin America, where we initially tried to discuss of all these things. I mean, one thing is that it may be good for the country, but then the political economy may facilitate other options that, involve, different types of technology, even linking to specific companies, because that, provides more resources, perhaps for political leaders or governments and stuff. So again, not because a solution is just efficient and good for the citizens, is an alternative for a technology that's going to be adopted. So I'm not minimizing the difficulties of making it happen, but I think it offers great opportunities for those that want to take it.
And I completely agree with you, Carlos, that it is good to not minimize the hurdles. Who do you see as losers in this system? I mean, we have talked a lot about the winners, inclusivity, about circularity, about this being citizen-driven, more democratic. Are there losers in this system?
I don't like to think about losers, because I think in order for a technology to win, I think generally, at least if not true, at least the rhetoric has to be a rhetoric that they are all winners. But I think in practice, when you see what has happened in Brazil and in India with the introduction of a system like UPI and PIX that potentially had the possibility of reducing there was the potential of reducing the incomes or the rents of the financial system and the banks. And in reality, that has not happened. The whole sector has expanded and everyone has benefited from it. So this is, a kind of at least rhetoric of, we're increasing the pie so everyone can benefit.
Yes, no, I like the idea of that pie increasing. Now, coming back to the G20, this is the first time that we've had 4 consecutive G20 presidents coming from the global south, with Indonesia, India, Brazil, and then next year, South Africa. How do you see this? Where is this? Can you share with the audience where exactly is this in the G20 process? And are you hopeful that South Africa will pick this up? And what are you doing to ensure that it does?
Well, I was hoping that this conversation and through your many contacts will help me, sort of devise that strategy. So I am relying on you to do that. But I think it is true that the fact that we have India and then Brazil and then South Africa, it offers, a really good path, to support these ideas. But, I think, again, on that, a lot of these things, and, through my illustrious career, as you mentioned, I think one thing I have learned is that we are very good at doing talking, but very little, in terms of actually getting things done. So I have done my talking and I have done my writing. So I'm just hoping now to just actually do things in the way that I mentioned to you. And I think it's possible to do it. But then, we need sort of, some flexible funders or, just champions that, allows, to do that. And I think, that's the approach that we're taking here, which is, I think, the model of what has been done in India, again, is based on not just one team, but many small teams, doing things and concentrating in doing things in a very entrepreneurial sort of way. So it's not about a process of administration or like, through a government, etc. But it's just simply, okay, where is there opportunity, how we make it happen? And so, with conviction and working with people that want to deliver. And so, that's what, we're in the process of getting these allies to say, not that, oh, this is the millennium goal or the, and we, but actually, okay, we have something in Belém. Now let's try to get the business community to do something in Chiclayo and start it up. Because I think, it's not a question of designing a model or talking about it, but actually making it happen.
Yeah, interesting. So it's let us maybe not 1,000 flowers bloom, but at least 100 flowers bloom in different places. And
yeah, but I think the advantage again of this is that once you begin to network, then you get the power of the network. So it's very I think it has the potential to transform the way we understand the economy or even flows. Because as I mentioned, we have Belém, which is in one part of the Amazonian. We have Chiclayo, which is on the Pacific side. And so, immediately those two areas just can become integrated for no reason, except because the digital IT allows them to do so. And then India, Bangalore is in the other place. And then you immediately get, these corridors of, of trade. So, but of course, what we need to do that is, a little bit of, funding just to, facilitate, the work, not big projects or anything, but, just to catalyze. And I think a lot of open networks as well, the advantage, I think, is that it's based on private sector initiatives. So this is not like the government needs to do much around them, encouraging us in Belém. Yes, this is a good initiative. Yes, we support it. Yes, we give it visibility. But really the drivers need to be the entrepreneurs that see this as an opportunity to create a new market, create a new business model, so that innovation has to come from the private sector and the academic community or universities like the one that you are there, are in, and that create the intellectual supporters or the people that can understand to create the technology. I think, Beacon has what is called Beacon Collective. So, it's a process by which a university becomes a chapter or, that where they support open networks and all that. So that's a process that, we will be trying to support as well, creating these, spaces in universities where, people get familiar with the technologies behind open networks.
Yeah, no, this is something that clearly would be of a lot of interest, I think, to a lot of universities. And also, you're talking about flexible funding. I think there would be a lot of philanthropic institutions, but also development finance institutions whose mandate it is to see faster development in different parts of the world, who would be interested in what you're doing. So we can have a conversation offline separately about that. But let's go back now to the university setting. For the students of Kautilya who will be listening to this webinar, what advice would you have for them? And as you think about, when I say advice, you have had a career that spans development work, public policy work, evaluation work, now this kind of cutting edge innovation work. As they're thinking about what should they focus on in their public policy curricula, but also areas of growth in terms of careers, because every student is finishing school and thinking about, what's my job going to be, what should I be working on, where can I be successful? What career advice do you have for our students?
I think although my career might look good, I mean, unlike you, I don't think I have been a deputy, in the United Nations or anything. So I will be the last person to provide career advice to anyone. But I think the only thing that I could say is that, it's useful to follow your interests, and your passions. And so, it's, a bit, less worry about exactly, what is going to happen with the economy, because that's unpredictable. But I think, from the area I have chosen to kind of, concentrate, I think that, India has, amazing potential, in all the IT sort of like systems and all these, ideas. And so I think, and as I said, I don't think that there is, it's not for certain that these technologies are going to win, but I think they deserve a good run. And I think, if people can, from different angles, sort of like support these approaches, I think, increasingly, as I am mentioning, in places like Brazil or, more generally, even Netherlands and the UK, this may become useful. And so I think it's just useful to, to understand, what the developments are, because they are really incredible. When I went to Bangalore, I thought, wow, how is this possible? How a country like India has been able to, and of course, you begin to understand that obviously Infosys and all this work, the people in Bangalore have been working for, as kind of the back office operations of large corporations in the US. And then you add to that the philanthropic work of Nilekani, focusing on okay, how can that help citizens? How can that work for the civil service? And then you see that there is a great potential there. But generally, people are seeing that India is going to do incredibly well in the future. So you can be all smiling if that's the case. And so I think I think that you are in the right place to have a good career.
Yes. No, and I think what you're saying about the potential for India to actually become to move from middle to high income is something that is top of mind for all policymakers.
Yeah.
And of course, there are no silver bullets. But one of the things that we do actually know, based on previous development stories, even if those are changing because of technology, is that India will not be able to make this leap into the high income category with just services. And so there will be a need for also India to focus not just on sectors like this, but also to think about what kind of manufacturing. Because the big question in India today, Carlos, as you know, is how to create jobs. Yeah. And with a huge demographic bulge that we have in India, with many young people, employment is the single biggest thing on people's minds. So I think you are right that this technology offers a lot of potential. And at the same time, there has to be attention to the other pillars of development that are needed. But one thing that is absolutely clear is that progress in India will not happen if it is mandated just by the central government. It really does have to be decentralized, state government-led, locally led, community-led, and everything that you are describing provide solutions that can actually fill that model of decentralized, local, state-led development that I think is needed. So I think we're coming to the end of our time here. I want to thank you, Carlos, for taking the time to spend with us and to share all your ideas, learnings, perspectives with us. Any last final closing thoughts to the students before we wrap up?
No.
Okay.
It's a pleasure to talk to your students, and yeah.
Thank you so much, Carlos, and look forward to seeing you and connecting with you again in the near future. To all students, we hope you enjoyed this webinar, and please take a moment or more to look at the website of innovation of the Innovation and Prosperity Hub at the Judge Business School in Cambridge University. Goodbye for now.